Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Cartridge Club, where we discuss our game of the month with the members of the Cartridge Club community. If you played along, you can always share your own experiences in the forums at cartridgeclub.org, in our community's Discord, or across social media by using the hashtag PlayAlongWithPrime. My name is Josh, also known as Frantic, and I'm one of the hosts for this show. Here with me, we have Ryan at It's Rocket Sauce and Tim at Are You Okay? And this month we played the Hideo Kojima classic, Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. Metal Gear Solid 3 was published by Konami and originally released on the PlayStation 2 in 2004. The game is self-described as a tactical espionage action game, which basically means it's a stealth action title. The game is set in 1964, 30 years before the events of the original Metal Gear. The story centers on the Fox operative codenamed Naked Snake, also known as Big Boss in future titles, as he attempts to rescue a Russian rocket scientist by the name of Nikolai Sokolov, sabotage an experimental superweapon called the Shagohod, and assassinate his defected former mentor, the Boss. Along the way, he must defeat all the members of the Cobra unit, which are an elite group of soldiers brought together by the Boss to help defeat the Axis powers during World War II. Alright, so let's jump into the conversation. So, Metal Gear Solid 3, everybody. Is this your first time playing it? What's your history with the game, and what's your overall impressions of the game? We'll start with Tim.
Well, this is my second time playing Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater. My first time around, I played it at launch. I think, what was it, 2004?
Yes.
2004. We were just talking before we went live here, 2004. Yeah, I remember going to get the game. Got it at Zeller's. I actually went to get it with my co-host on the channel. Are You Okay? The running joke being that game was like $80 to $90 at launch. Like, that was an expensive ass game at launch. And then he ended up getting Dragon Ball Budokai 3, which was $40, which also came out apparently the same day. Yeah, that time around, it was fun. I had a good time with it. Played on a 14-inch TV. Probably didn't get the full experience of it. Yeah, pretty much played it once and forgot about it. I actually originally planned to go back and play this game about 6 months ago. And I think it was around then that you guys announced it as the Cartridge Club Game of the Month. And not too long after that, one of you guys reached out to me, or both of you guys reached out to me. Yeah, to come on for this. So I'm like, okay, I'll save it. So I've had this game kind of on the brain for like the last 6 months, but this time around I played it on the HD version.
Yeah, I think we saw a tweet of yours that you said that you wanted to play, and I was like, hold up, wait a minute, I got an idea here for a guest. So
let's put some Metal Gear in it. Okay,
that's right.
Never mind.
Yeah, I was like, okay, we'll put this one on pause. But it's great because in between that time, that was enough time for the Metal Gear HD collection for 2 and 3 to come up on Xbox Game Pass.
Yeah.
So yeah,
perfectly planned, like we always do here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was originally going to play it on the PS3 one, the one that comes with Peace Walker.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really glad that happened because I already had the Xbox set up. It was way easier. Yeah. I mean, I will get into it, but oh my God, playing that game in HD is was so different from playing it on like the little 14-inch TV I used to have on the my bedroom, little 14-inch CRT.
It's a really good port job, I thought. And I was surprised to see it was Blue Point Games because, like, they made that Shadow of the Colossus remaster and all these things. At least the Xbox version is Blue Point Games. So, yeah, it looked really good on my TV as well. Ryan, what's your general impression of the game? Have you played it before? All that stuff.
Yeah, I've played this game multiple times. The thing about this game, though, there's in probably almost any Metal Gear game is probably no matter how many times I play it, there's always something new I pick up every time I play the game. Something I always miss or went over my head, or a story point that I completely miss. And that's always like, especially when there is a new Metal Gear game, kind of always like reliving the series and catching up little points that, oh, I didn't know this connects with this here and there. But yeah, like after playing it this time through, I want to say this is probably my 5th time beating this game. This game's definitely in my top 10 games of all time. I absolutely love this game. It's my favorite in the series. I will say that I mean, most people know me as the N64 guy, so the first game did miss me when it originally came out because I just wasn't going to get anything on the PlayStation. But I got a PS2, and I have one of my friends in high school, still a friend to this day. He was a huge fan of the series, and I remember the praise for Metal Gear Solid 2 when it came out. It was highly regarded, highly critically acclaimed. So I rented it from a Blockbuster, and I fell in love with the series. Made me go back, rent Metal Gear Solid 1, play that. Still was kind of a little rough around the edges going back from Metal Gear Solid 2 to 1, but 2 made me a fan of the series where I'm like, okay, that was cool. And then when the third game came out, I believe I got it for Christmas that year in 2004. So I remember, I think, playing it around whatever, shortly after Christmas. And I was even taken back even more, where after that, I knew whatever franchise Metal Gear was going to be on, it was a console seller for me. Where if the next Metal Gear game is on PS3 or Xbox, I'm buying it because I need to play the next game of the franchise after playing 3. And there's just so many like little things you can talk about this game that I just absolutely loved. So it's, like I said, it's one of my favorite games of all time.
Okay, so a little history for me personally is I played this game. I've been trying to like nail it down in my head because I played it 2 times before, but since it came out in 2004, I feel like I played it a couple years after that, so like 2006 or so. I remember liking the game, but I was in high school and a lot of like the story beats went over my head at the time, and I kind of understood what was going on, but it was Cold War, and I didn't really care about history that much, and I played it again. I must have been like a few years ago on the PS3, and I didn't actually beat it 100% that time. I remember fighting Volgin, which is one of the boss fights near the end. That was like the last time I played that game. It's because I have a save on my PS3, which is actually right there. That leaves off right there. So I went ahead and played it like Tim did on the Xbox because of Game Pass, which I love Game Pass. It's been really awesome. And just downloaded it and hopped on there and started over fresh and played it all over again. And just this is one of those games that it leaves a lasting impression for me. I'll go back and just think about it. I'll just be doing something else and I'll think about it, or I compare other games to that game a lot. And I'm not sure. It's hard for me to rank the Metal Gear series, but I feel like it's close to the top. Like I have a really huge fondness for 4 personally, but it's like you need to play the other ones to have that fondness, to love it as much. And 4 like blew me away at the time. So I feel like that one just had a bigger impact on me, but I absolutely love Metal Gear Solid 3. It's highly rated personally. A lot of people say that Kojima has his own house style. Like he puts his name on every game. This is a Hideo Kojima game, like even Death Stranding, which just came out. How do you guys personally feel about like the Hideo Kojima flair and style of game?
Like, what do we feel about like Kojima's style in general and like him putting his name on his games? Here's the thing. One of my favorite horror directors growing up was John Carpenter. And John Carpenter put his name on everything he did. And in that respect, it's kind of hard to like look at a guy who like, puts together a game like Metal Gear. It's like, you know what? You want to put your name on it? Fine. And the guy's crafted an image and kind of a brand for himself too in that respect. And personally, I'm a fan of it. I like it. I like how weird and kind of like serious, but at the same time, ultra comical so much of his material is.
Yeah.
Like, God, the original, like, what was it? The original Metal Gear game on the MXX had a boss just called the Shotgunner. Like, that was his thing. He had a shotgun.
Yep.
That was his whole shtick. Or like crazy, like monstrous shamans riding tanks that control like crows and shit. But there's also like this ultra deep political storyline with actual roots to it. And I've loved it for that. Like, the thing is, I don't know, outside of Zone of the Enders, right? And I guess now Death Stranding, I haven't really played any of his other stuff. Like, I know he did like Snatcher and Police Knots, and I love the aesthetic of that, but I've never got to play the game.
Yeah.
No, speaking of when it comes to the style, the one thing about it that I always like is there's always like a uniqueness to his games too. Even the Metal Gears that make themselves differently. While looking into, I guess, more research about Metal Gear here and more into Kojima, I guess. So he had a game for the Game Boy Advance called Bokutai, and I believe it's one of those games that has like an odd shaped cartridge for the Game Boy Advance. And I believe it has one of those like LED like sunlight boards, kind of like a calculator built into it. And I believe there's a boss fight in the game with a vampire where if you take the game actually like outside and play it outside with sunlight, it weakens the boss basically. Like it completely. It's like it's a little. I don't know. It's pretty neat. I think with little twists like that is what I think is neat. And essentially, like stuff like that carries over into his boss fights into this game. And I shouldn't say that, but how they all have like uniqueness to them. And are you fine with me getting into the boss talk
Yeah,
here,
that's fine.
Josh?
Let's do it, man.
Yeah.
Because I want to bring up the end here because the end is maybe one of my favorite boss fights of all time. And aside from Josh, you told me that you took him out. You have at least a play save of it or something where you killed him instantly. You didn't
Yeah.
even get into the fight. You just took him out immediately, which I was not aware of. Do you
There's-
want to talk about that here a little
Yeah,
bit?
there's with the end there, the end he has like a photosynthesis suit on, so he's basically dead and you have to fight him like a sniper battle. There's a scene before you even get to him. This is like 3 bosses before him. And then they wheel him out onto the dock, and they're all talking around him. There's like a cutscene. After that cutscene, you can see him get wheeled back inside of the building. If you're fast enough and you pull out a gun fast enough, you can snipe him in the head right there, and you don't even have to fight him. Which
Yeah.
it's crazy.
I tried that like 10 times and I could not do it.
It was I remember doing it when I played it on PS3, but it's like I said, I made a save. Like I knew where it was, and I made a save there, and I just kept loading it until I did it, just because I wanted to do it just to see if I could. So.
I'm sure there's an achievement for that too or something. But one thing I can point out too is I wasn't aware of it until years after playing it that you can beat the end by. I guess you could fast forward the clock in the game, but it's essentially as if you save the game and you come back a week later, he dies of old age because story point wise, I think he's on the verge of death, but he's like essentially saving this last fight. That you're going to be his last fight before he passes on, because he's this legendary sniper. But I do not recommend doing that just for the fact that, like I said, I think it's one of the most rewarding, fun boss fights ever. And I can even remember to the first time playing it because you're equipped. If you look in I think your backpack on the select menu, there is one of those little satellite dishes that pick up sounds. It's like a little portable one that you hold in your hand. So I want to say the first time I fought him, I had like an hour and a half fight, and it was because it was just me crawling around the entire desert, trying not to get sniped. It was just me, like it's like a sniper fight where he's trying to find you and you're trying to find him. So you're going around, maybe climbing the trees, just using a little dish, looking to pick up his sound, and then sometimes you can find him falling asleep, or his little parrot makes the noise, it gives away his location, and that's when you can take a snipe shot at him. It was one of the most fun fights I've ever had in my life. Even now playing it, I find it still fun to do. And this time, granted, I kind of know what I'm doing now, so it's not going to take an hour and a half for me to do. I think I generally beat it within 5 to 10 minutes because it's not that hard when you know what you're doing. But like upon first time playing it, it was just, I guess, mind blowing for me. So, and that's very much his style. Tying that back up, I've never experienced anything like that in a game prior, or even probably since to this day, something like that.
Yeah. There's an old quote from Kojima where he said that his ideal video game is him making a game where if he died, the cartridge would just stop working or catch on fire or, just stop working. He's one of those people that he has an idea. A lot of times you'll have an idea. Oh, that'd be cool if I did that. He does it. I feel like a lot of times, which is pretty cool with his game design.
He does things that just in the Metal Gear games specifically that just nobody thinks of. It's the best way to put it. Like the thing that tripped me up, right? Going through all the menu systems in that, the curing, the food, the camouflage, but in kind of bringing it back to the boss thing, how each of the boss fights kind of force you to adapt to that. Like, bosses will injure you. You have to heal yourself quickly in the middle of a boss fight. Or, like you were saying with the end, you kind of have to get better at camo if you want to be able to sneak up and catch the end. Just things like that, right? I'm a fan that I love that he does that. But also to retort with your answer about the the end. I'm not gonna lie to you. I thought my boss fight with him this time would be different. I really did. First time around, just devolved into a game of chasing him around with a machine gun. Basically, it's not elegant, but it cuts the fight down from maybe an hour and a half to 20 minutes, half hour. This time, I really tried for the sniper battle. 20 minutes in, I just wasn't getting far enough. I had the thermal goggles. I was trying to do the whole, just wait him out. And impatience took over, and look, basically the game kind of devolved into a match of just chase the old bastard around with the shotgun until he just gave up. So yeah, I didn't get his special armor. I don't know. Did either of you guys get it?
How do you get it? Like, I don't even know how. Like,
you apparently have to. You apparently have to stick him up like 2 or 3 times, and he'll eventually give it to you.
I can't say I have. It's every time I've played it. Generally, it's kind of. I don't want to say the slow, because I kind of was like, all right, well, I know he's going in that general direction, so I know he's not going to be in this area, so I can sprint to that area and then just play the crawl game until I hear where he's at, and then bam, shoot, and then same thing, keep repeating. But first time, different story.
Well, for me, it was like he would hit me with a trank dart, and it's like, okay, just quickly go into the cure menu, just use the knife, get that needle out of you. Go immediately back, and I'm like, okay, I know where he's at now because he just shot me, and I'm not even hurt. So I just run up to him. I'll pump him with a shotgun blast. Kind of try and get out of the way a little bit because he'll, as soon as he gets up, he'll try and like flash grenade you or something to get away. But pretty much know where he's at. So then you just follow him until he goes to his next spot. Repeat. It is the least elegant way to fight the end. I'm sure of it. But. It works.
I mean, the way I did it this specific time is just like, you know what? I'm just gonna run around until he shoots me, and then when he shoots me, I know where he is, and then I can snipe him. That's kind of how I did it this time. So,
yeah, it's like he gives you all the chances in the world to figure out how he gives away his position, because he doesn't really kill you. He just waits you out.
Just going back to Kojima style, like a lot of his stuff is, I think he's a giant fan of cinema. I mean, like Snake's character the name Snake comes out of Snake Plissken from, was it Leaving?
Escape from LA.
Escape from LA and Escape from New York.
Oh, sorry, Escape from New York. Escape from LA and Escape from New York.
Yeah, because he even in Metal Gear Solid 2, when Snake is, sorry, I don't want to tie this into Metal Gear Solid 2, but there's a part where he's going by the codename of Pliskin in Metal Gear Solid 2. So very much.
Yeah, it's a little hard to not talk about the other games because they reference the other games like a lot, like the Raiden maps that you have. That the scientist in the building, this like super hangar, looks just like Raiden from number 2, and you have to like dress up, put his mask on. That's pretty cool.
Take him out, then put the mask on.
Yeah, true. Take him out.
The fear fight. I don't know if the first time I can recall doing that too is like. This time I didn't need it, but I kind of remember the first time where you need the thermal goggles, and it kind of almost felt like the Predator almost, because you're like lurking in the trees, running around, jumping between trees, the stuff like that. The Sorrow fight was great too. That's another fight that's very much different from any other fight, where it all depends how many people you kill will show up in the pond. So like if you kill nobody, so prior to this time I accidentally killed, I think 3 people, because I was just trying to choke them out and accidentally slipped their throats. But it was my goal to take out as least amount of people as possible, because granted, you still have a certain amount of distance to walk, but the people that you kill up until that point will show up into this river as ghosts, and it's kind of that's damage. And they do damage. So if you kill nobody, you're gonna not see anybody except for the 2 bosses you killed, which were the Fear, the End, and actually I think all of them are at that point. I think the Sorrow was after all those guys.
Fury.
So, the Fury.
Yeah, Fury. Mm-hmm.
So you'll see all the bosses you kill, but that's about it. But I just thought that's something that's really, really neat that's not thought of ever really in games either. So
yeah, I was definitely making a conscious decision with the Sorrow this time around to not kill as many people, like in the same boat for sure. Like, because the first time I played that game, like my basic philosophy was, well, they can't sound an alarm if they're dead, so
just kill as many people as you can, and then you get to that lake, and it's like people everywhere.
Apparently, if you wait for one of the vultures to kill one of the people, to start eating one of the soldiers you killed, and then you kill and eat that vulture, he'll like when you see that soldier come by later in the Soros element, he'll be like, "You fed on me." Ah.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's apparently a lot of them. Like, I didn't realize how many meta ways there were to fight the bosses in this game. Like, where apparently you can give the fear rotten fruit.
Really?
Like,
Does he takes damage from that, or what? Does he eat it, or?
well, like the whole idea is like, like when he uses his stealth camo, his stamina depletes faster. So it gets to a point where he loses it, and he has to get fruit that's kind of like hanging in the trees and like eat that to revive himself. Just to revive his stamina. Sorry. But if you either shoot it and let it rot there for a while, or leave rotten fruit in the ground and he picks that up instead, he'll eat the rotten fruit. He'll get like stunned. You can just like wail away on him.
That's awesome.
If we're going through the Easter eggs, I know there's one for the Volgan fight too. If you put on the Raiden mask when you first fight Volgan, he won't attack you at first.
Yeah, he questions it, right? He's like, I forgot, because I assume, I don't want to say that Volgan's gay, because I think Eva points out that he's a masculinist, or he just gets off on giving pain, really, right?
Yeah, well, I think the general term is, can we swear on this podcast?
You can.
Volgan fucks.
Yeah, it's really that's what it is. He gets around.
That's the gist of it. I don't think Volgan cares. Volgan just fucks.
Yeah. But that character means something to him too, though, because he questions it when you put on the fight. Like, he's like, really? Kind of. He won't attack you until you start doing some like. I like to do the CQC against him. I thought that was way more fun, because you can really get close to him. If you stay a further distance to try and fighting Vulcan, is when you're going to do damage. But if you can get near him, you can just throw him to the ground, and then he takes damage. And then you could probably, I think I was shooting him when he's on the ground with like a shotgun or something.
Oh yeah, just throw him to the ground, pump him once with the shotgun, and then you just rinse, repeat. Mm-hmm. One thing I really found that worked really well for the bosses, though, you really got to stand your ground to do it. The M63, the light assault rifle?
Yes.
The one where he like screams when he's firing it off, like, ah, yeah. If you stand your ground, like with, say, like someone like the Fury or even the boss, you will just erase their health bar.
I've never tried it. That's cool.
I tried it on my final fight with a boss, and wow, it was just like her health just went half, maybe.
Did she call you a cheater or something like that? I'm only saying because I think I forgot what I did in one of these attempts to fighting the boss, which is the final fight in the game. I want to say I tried using, I don't know if I think I tried using the rocket launcher or something like that, and she said something like, "Don't be cheap" or something like that to me. It was something seriously like that. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I won't pull this one out for the next time, because I think she just took me and threw me to the ground. I can't remember exactly what it was, but she just said, "Really, you have no class," or something like that to me.
I'm amazed how little the RPG did in terms of boss fights, at least from what I tried. Mm-hmm. Like, I got that right before the Fury, and I'm thinking, all right, I found like the RPG that's stashed away. This Fury boss fight's going to be so easy. It barely took off anything. It was like a sliver of his health gone. I'm like, oh, this was a waste.
I think the boss battle is probably my favorite boss battle in the game, because there's so many ways you can go about doing it. Like you guys were saying, the way I decided to do this. So basically, the premise of it is, she's your mentor, and she defects to the Soviet Union, and you have to kill her. That's your mission, like throughout the game. So you meet her at the end of the game in this flower field, and you have to kill her. And she said, she explains her backstory, and she's like the first person to go to space, and Kojima stuff. And you fight her in this field. So I was when I was a kid, like when I first played this, I couldn't figure out how to beat her. Like, I was like, what do I do? And then I figured out the CQC method, where you just out CQC her basically. This time I decided I'm going to try something different. I went ahead and put on the snow camo, and I was around the perimeter, and I took out the sniper, and I kind of treated it like a sniper battle almost. So she'll go looking for you, and if you have a high camo, she can't see you, right? So I pop up, and I just snipe her 2 times, and I'll knock her over, and her health will go down. And I'll just run to a different part of the map, lay down, and then do it again. And I did that to beat her this time. And it was just something different I wanted to try to see if it would work, and it worked. So, which was pretty cool.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
I think I want to say I know the first time I think I beat her through a gunfight because I want to say I couldn't figure out CQC the first time I played this game, which stands for close quarters combat. But it's a fighting method that the boss and Snake developed for themselves. Basically, it's their style of fighting. This time through, because I think I tried shooting right away and it was not going easy for me. So I think I finally figured it out either this time or maybe the time prior that there would be like a little exclamation mark that goes above Snake's head, and if you just hold down circle, he basically I believe he just throws her to the ground and then you can just kick her when she's on the ground. But the thing about that is, and maybe it's built like this way on purpose, that because they want you to get through the long dramatics of Snake Eater song while the fight's going on too. But you're up against a 10-minute window to do this because she called in an air raid to blow up the area. So I want to say it took me at least about 10 tries this time to do just the straight CQC fight because I kept on running out of time. I kept getting her health pretty low to the end, but just couldn't get her with the timer going off, and eventually it would always end with getting bombed, and it would say what there's like a time paradox or something like
paradox.
that.
Yeah, because of course this is a set before 30 years before the original Metal Gear. So, well, if Big Boss died in 1964, none of the other games would work. So since it's a prequel.
Do you guys remember like the marketing for this game when it initially was coming out, like during like peak hype of like Metal Gear Solid 3 back in the day?
I'll be 100% honest with you. I don't. I just remember this game showing up on the shelves, and I knew I had to have it. That's all. That's honestly all I can really remember. I don't remember commercials. I don't.
I remember Power of Nostalgia, or maybe I just remember the wrong things. But anyway, point is, when this game came out, it was like peak Metal Gear hype. Now, like Metal Gear Solid 2 was a really big deal because like, one was like game of the year for like so many people, so many publications. And then 2 kind of had the whole thing where it was peak hype, but the way it was marketed, they didn't tell you about, Snake not being the main character of his own game. Spoilers for 2?
Yeah.
I think we're beyond that, but yeah. And then for part 3, they kind of tried to pull something different with the marketing. I remember because they never explicitly said, like nowadays with the collections, right? You'll boot it up and they'll say, this is the story of Big Boss. Back in the day, they tried to leave that kind of a secret. They didn't reveal it in any of that. Like it was very clearly taking place at that time, but nobody would outright say that, yes, this is Big Boss. That was supposed to be like a big in-game reveal.
So spoilers, I guess.
Well, yeah, I guess, but I mean, at the same time, like if you get the game now, it's just interesting because it was marketed that way back then. Although everyone kind of suspected, right? But that's also Kojima, so who knows? Maybe he's got a rabbit out of his ass here. Maybe the whole thing was a VR simulation. You don't know. But yeah, but it just kind of that struck me because now if you log in, you'll like go to the collection and you'll look at the description before you even start the game, and it'll say the story of Big Boss, but the story of how Big Boss attained the title of Big Boss, and you're like, okay, spoiler, I guess.
And that is actually kind of a big reveal at the end because when you defeat the boss, she says there can only be one boss, and you defeat her, and then when you get awarded by President Nixon at the end, he says you are the Big Boss. He gives you that medal. Yeah. So that is actually a reveal at the end of the game. So saying it in the description is kind of like that is like the in-game spoiler right there, kind of.
I guess they're just counting on probably people who've probably already beat the game and want to replay it on a new console when it comes to this point.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it was even fairly obvious back in the day. I mean, once you put the time frame, once you kind of know about Snake and Liquid's history and like the other games, it's like, okay, well, this has to be what they're setting it up for, right? But yeah, they weren't super obvious about it. They were like revealing little bits at a time, but unless there was like a bit of marketing I missed. I remember that being like, Snake in, Snake after the Cold War, but that was all they really said.
We all have experience with Metal Gear. What do you guys think? How do you think this compares from an urban environment? Normally when you play, you're in an urban environment. Now you're in like the Soviet jungle setting. What do you think about the setting, like the graphics? Like, how do you like that feel of that Soviet jungle for this game?
I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I was a sucker for the camo and everything to it. I guess when it comes to like history stuff, I'm always fascinated by stuff like the Vietnam War, and this kind of takes place right around that era. But no, I prefer it. It's when looking into this game's, development and everything. I guess that was the purpose. But the game was originally being developed for the PS3, but because the complications and how long it was taking to, I guess, develop the console for the PS3, that they kind of just pushed it to the PS2. And originally it was being developed for the PS3. And what Kojima said was that the purpose was to do it for a jungle, and the main reasons why they stuck to, I guess, the I don't want to say warehouse feel, but kind of that fortress feel, maybe with the
A little
first two
more,
games.
yeah, a little more
Oh.
sterile environments.
They said that the main reason why was because of the hardware limitations. That the main reason why they could only build environments like that is because the environment, it was just easier to develop for. The whole idea with making a more 3D mountainous area climbing around, they thought they were going to be able to do that more with and they still did with this game, but I think it was more to deal with the ease of development for the first two games to have that kind of setting. But I much prefer the setting. I love the whole hiding in, I guess, the grass and just where this game takes place, that in history where this game takes place, and tying it all into, I guess,
Like the arms race, the
Yeah.
rocket race, all that.
yeah.
I personally do enjoy the camo system, and the thing is, when I first played this game, I thought it was like the most beautiful game I've ever seen. Like I could see how it could be a PS3 game, like if you pushed it just that little bit more, you know. I just thought like this is the first time I ever ran into like a field of grass and like the grass would move out of the way as you run through it. You know what I mean? Little things like that just make this whole entire environment just come alive. Like the first time you go into the jungle at the very beginning of the game, there's a snake hanging from a tree. You know, there's a rabbit hopping around at different points. It's like a entire little ecosystem that they built inside this game, which is really interesting to me.
Yeah, crocodiles by the lakes and everything. You know,
Yeah.
because you're in a jungle. And
That's a great food source right at the beginning of the game too. I was initially trying to try and get like that like there was a crocodile helmet, crocodile like camo I remember
Mhm.
being able to get, that if you like have it, you can like go undetected if you're like going through water. So I just came back with an assault rifle after I found it and just started cleaning house. And yeah, 10 or 12 like alligators afterwards, nothing. A lot of meat though. Recovers like almost 2/4 of your health, or two 2/4 of your health.
And this one kind of requires on the system, like for like your health depreciates, right, in this game, and like you'll start hearing your tummy rumble, and
Yeah. After half, yeah.
yeah, and I think some people might find that an annoyance, but because the first two games didn't do that, that was something that was implemented in this one. But you know, I don't mind it. There's plenty of like rations and
Yeah, it's
snakes
it's
and
basically a
rabbits.
stamina bar, right?
Yeah.
You know, you have your main health. If you get hurt, you have like a little red section of the health that won't go away until you cure. And then, of course, like you said, you got to eat to make the stamina bar go back up. If it's low, you won't heal as fast, right? So
Yeah. Did you like having to perform surgeries on yourself?
I don't mind it. It can feel a little like, I don't know, tedious.
Tacked on,
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah,
yeah,
It provides heavy incentive to not get caught by anybody.
it does.
that's true.
Because then you're not trying to like fix 4 bullet wounds, a burn, and like friggin' like deep cut wound or something.
You know, the only time though I really felt it, like when it was more of an annoyance for me, was in the middle of a boss fight, when like you're in this heavy boss fight and I'm like, "Oh, I got a bullet hole," so it happens, you get shot again right away. This mostly happened when the first Vulcan fight for me, because he does shoot a lot of ammunition at you from his hands. Yeah, because then you have to stop. Then you have to kind of remember what it is. Okay, well, I need the knife to remove the bullet. Then I need to put like some kind of antiseptic on there. Then I need to put a Band-Aid on there, and then I need to put something else on there. Okay, that's cleaned. Okay, I broke my arm. Now I need to do this. I need to put a sprint against me. I need to bandage this up and stuff like that. I could see it being. I mean, that was the only time I'm like, oh, I got to do this again because I keep getting hit. But
It kind of goes with the flow of the mechanics, so you get used to it as you play. And if you're careful, you're probably not going to have to do it too often, and you're pretty decent at the CQC and stealth. Basically, the more you get hurt, you're going to have to do it more often.
There's plenty of Band-Aids. There's plenty of like health items to refill your health and whatnot. So it's not like you have to worry about running out of Band-Aids and and whatnot. But it was just one of those things where I'm like, but this is a minor nuisance. It's like I said, it doesn't happen throughout the game. It mostly just happened for me in a couple major boss fights. But
Yeah.
There was life medicine, but I found it was pretty rare. Like you didn't really encounter it many times throughout the game, and even then, you didn't find much of it.
Yeah, just when I usually end up using the life medicine like near the end of the game where it's like that Volgan tank battle where he's like going around. That's usually when I like, okay, I'm gonna have it on,
yeah.
because that he can do some serious damage and you'll have to redo the entire thing if he kills you. So
That makes sense. Yeah, the I don't know. Like I found the boss, like particularly for the Fury, was probably the worst for me because it did take me a few times. Like you can deplete half the Fury's health easy, no problem. And then he goes aggro on you, and it's just like burn. You're constantly going back to the menu, just like bringing out ointment, trying to like trade all the savage burns from his jet fuel flamethrower that he carries around.
yeah, he's like a
Or was it like
dude in
fuel?
a
Yeah.
he's like in a space suit, like with a giant flamethrower and a jetpack, basically.
was the story behind all the bosses that, and I'm just going off memory here, that they're all were a part of like her elite squad, right?
Yeah, the Ravens, and she got them together during
Cobras.
World War II. Cobras, my bad.
Oh,
See, I
sorry.
made that. Yeah, I made that mistake too when I was looking into it. So
Yeah, no, because I'm thinking Vulcan Raven from earlier too. Yeah.
yeah.
But like, yeah, the Cobras were like a unit that I guess they in that world they were kind of known as legendary heroes that helped turn the tide of World War II.
Which is
So
badass.
yeah, which is very badass, right? Even though you look at half of them, you're like, really, those guys? Like the B guy and the dude who's talking about fear and nightmares all the time are like the good guys, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
War is strange.
And
But I guess that's also a theme of it, though. So
and then you eventually find out that the Sorrow and the boss had a history together, right? That they had a relationship, and I think Josh, you said she killed him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
She killed him because it can only be one boss, right? That's the gist I got of it. Like
it was like
it was intended. I think it was intended on purpose, though, right? Because he would go on to have his he'd go on to become what he is after being killed by the boss, right?
Well, basically, from what I remember happening was the Cobras split up after the war, because the boss preaches a lot in the game about like sides change. Friends can suddenly become enemies on a whim. Are you prepared to? And she keeps asking Snake that question: are you prepared to do what's necessary? Loyalty to the country or loyalty to me? And that becomes a big thing because apparently, the Sorrow was on a mission of his own. Or they were just on opposite sides of like a conflict at the time, and she killed him, and he said it was okay because this is where it gets a little dicey. But from what I recall, the Cobras were in space at one point.
I mean, that explains the Fury, right?
Yeah, the Fury for sure. The Fury talks about it, and the boss talks about it at the end too. Just about how she saw the world from orbit. And she saw a world that had no borders, no nationalities, no East versus West, just one mass, everyone living on it. And that's kind of becomes the dream of like the entire. That's like the dream that fuels the series more or less. Like the boss's ideology, the boss's dream is kind of what fuels everybody pretty much involved in Metal Gear Solid 3, from Ocelot to Snake to Eva to Zero. Maybe a little less for Sigint and Paramedic, but basically the idea is they kind of have this future that they want to bring about, like that kind of world without borders sort of deal. And it kind of becomes this poison thing after a while, because obviously as you see as Metal Gear goes on, like those people involved start turning on each other because they have different ideas of what the boss wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of in the same way that I guess we're in full spoiler territory here for Metal Gear Solid 3, right? Like I'm assuming nothing's off the table. Okay.
Yep.
The reveal at the end that, the boss knew.
She's like the ultimate martyr.
Yeah. The ultimate hero, willing to do whatever it took for the mission for what she wanted to see. As long as the ideology carried on, she was okay with it because it's just two sides of the same conflict. It's like two sides of a conflict, but they wanted to go with something beyond that. I'm sure there's a more eloquent way to put it, but that's kind of what I got from it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even with Eva's turn at the end, remember she was supposed to do a couple things, but she didn't because of the boss, right? that everyone was generally kind of, I guess they respected her, and I don't know if they feared her, but
Oh, they
definitely
feared her.
yeah, Volgan wouldn't even go against her. Like,
Seeing Volgan like cower back at the boss was like one of the top moments for me. Just when she kind of challenges him, steps up, and it's like the one moment where like Volgan is just like this indomitable prick for like the entire game. And then the boss just like takes 2 steps forward him and he just cowers back like, whoa, 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 I didn't mean anything. I didn't mean a thing. It's just, I don't know. I love that. It's like, wow. It's like even Volgan is like, I'm not messing with this woman. Like, not happening.
Do they explain it in this game? I think they do, but I can't pinpoint it to it. But I think it's alluded to in this game that Ocelot is her child with the sorrow, and it explains kind of his hairstyle later on in the games.
Yeah.
In Metal Gear 1, 2, and 4, having the same kind of hair pattern as the sorrow. Yeah, it explains, I think, eventually how he's able to pick up CQC later on in the game because he's her child. But I don't know if he knows that. That's the thing, is like, I think that's one of those things where he was taken away from her, in order.
Yeah.
He was taken away from her, so I don't know if it was intended on purpose, right? Like, so I don't know if it's to protect him or was just that so she continue working for the government or something like that.
I don't know how much that's described or explained, but maybe in like, I know Metal Gear Solid 4 like breaks every little detail of this stuff down, so maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, there are details in 4 I kind of forget, and there's a lot of questions I have about his relation to the Sorrow and how many of the Sorrow's abilities got passed on to Ocelot, i.e. having Liquid's arm and suddenly channeling Liquid as a person.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of answered in 5, but I'm not going to go into the spoiling that if you've never played 5.
Oh shit, you're right. I actually forgot. That was.
But no, it's a good point. I mean,
it's a very minor spoiler, that one.
I think that kind of, I don't want to give away the twist for 5, but
oh no. Well, I mean, I know the twist you're talking about, but anyway, yeah, we're not gonna tread that. I see that thin water.
I'm just gonna point out. I think what people
thin ice. Sorry.
I was never. I love all these games in this series. The only one I really haven't played was Peace Walker. That's the only one I can really say. I ran out of time last time trying to do it before the last Metal Gear came out. I meant to, just have yet to go back to do it. But I think one thing listening to when I attended Portland Retro Gaming Convention 2 years ago, there was a Retronauts podcast going on there, and they actually had one guy who worked on the development for Metal Gear Solid 3, and one of the guys who worked on the development for Metal Gear Solid 4, and the guy who worked on 3 also worked on 4. And he got hired on for Metal Gear Solid 3 because he was a game developer, or he was like whatever, up and coming, whatever. He was supposed to interview him for whatever job he was doing, and he asked him a question in Japanese. Like, he ran into him and asked him a question, and he's like, oh, he was kind of taken back by it. And I think it wasn't like your regular, how do you make a game or something like that. It was just like a thorough question about something with the history of the game, and he was taken back by it. But ultimately, Kojima liked this guy enough where he hired him on to work for Metal Gear Solid 3 on the translation team, because he knew Japanese and he was native, English to America, where it was very important to Kojima that the language being spoke for that region was from someone from that region, that the game, it wasn't just inappropriately translated. Like, he realized everyone, different cultures talk differently, so the game had to reflect that. That was very important to him, that if this is games taking place takes place in America, or for whatever North American users, he wanted to speak like how, I guess, we talk normally. In Japan would be handled by a different team, or it's how Japanese people talk. And to me, like, little stuff, little attention to detail to it, to me, like, is incredible. But just, I guess, backtrack to that. One thing I know that they were talking about on this podcast is people didn't like 4 because it answered questions that people always had in their mind, where in their heads they thought, okay, this is how it happens, blah, blah, blah. And he answers a lot of questions saying, no, this is actually how it is. And people did not like that about 4. And 5 even more so goes into that too, where people really did not like answers being like mysteries that were always for 1, 2, and 3 completely answered where people were like, well, I don't like that answer. So I guess, it's kind of one of those things where people might hate having the answer for them, and they'd much rather have their own interpretation in their head. It's just little attention to details that I always find fascinating when it comes to these Kojima games.
So one thing I love about like Hideo Kojima, when he makes his games, he always makes sure that the sound design is awesome and there's always a really good score. So what do you guys think about the music, the sound effects, all that stuff in Metal Gear Solid 3? Tim.
Well, I mean, a lot of the sound effects I found to be, you have your classic Metal Gear sound effects in there, the alert status, things like that. I thought about this a bit. Like, I thought the score was appropriate, especially the first time around. I got very used to that alert music. The second game, not so much. But for what me really stood out, now, you touched on this earlier when you talked about the boss. But one of my favorite things in any form of storytelling is if you can add a vocal track to your climax in any way, I'm sold. 9 times out of 10, like it just works. It adds to it, right? So getting Snake Eater kind of slowly building as that fight goes on, for me, was great. I love that little bit of sound design. There's one other thing about Snake Eater I want to talk about, but I think you have that saved for a later section.
No, we could talk about it the ladder section, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, the ladder section. Oh man,
that's interesting. It's a choice.
It's meme worthy these days.
So basically what we're talking about is there's a scene where you're at the base of the mountain and you have to climb this gigantic ladder in the center of the mountain to get to the top. And as you're just climbing it, just one rung at a time, and then out of nowhere slowly builds in the theme song, the Snake Eater theme song that he was mentioning. And of course, it's like a very James Bondy feeling, that theme. I love that. Basically, it's the ladder's just long enough, if you just keep holding up, that the song will start, you play the entire song, and it ends at the very top. Just kind of like a nice moment. Like you're just kind of like with your thoughts listening to that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. That and the sounds of climbing a ladder.
Yeah.
Just adding vocal tracks to anything makes it better, especially climbing ladders.
Yeah. Anytime I can see it like that as a meme. I remember with Nier Automata, there was a scene. There is a very much another tall ladder scene in that game in one of the buildings, and I saw someone made a GIF of it where they just added the Snake Eater theme to it. And it's it's very meme worthy. Where I've seen, I think recently on Twitter there was just like a little emojis made the reference to the Snake Eater too, and I don't know. Anytime I see a long ladder in a game, it's something I think of now when thinking about this game. For I guess another thing I'll point out is that as for music, I want to say the opening credits, the title screen music, the very slow pace where you see it like in camouflage or two shadows, you can see it's like Snake taking out, I guess, one of these soldiers, but it's like him doing CQC with the slow beat playing in the background with the camouflage changing too constantly between all the different colors. It's another one that really sticks in my head when playing this game.
It's a very memorable title screen. Like I can hear the music in my head right now just thinking about it. So
yeah, I remember that looking really fluid at the time too, for like a PS2 game that kind of looked that smooth and detailed with its like fight animations. I remember looking at that and being like, ooh, next gen, like this almost looks next gen at the time, or maybe that's just nostalgia glasses. But
this is kind of going over to another topic, I guess, but the HD remaster is like phenomenal for this. I think it's one of the best HD remasters I've seen.
They did a lot of cleaning up in it, from what I understand, and maybe it had to do with some of the hardware limitations. But one thing that's great about the HD edition is it actually is like the Substance edition, right? Am I saying that right, or is it Substance? Subsistence. There you go. Thank you. So in addition to getting a cleaner version of the game, you get all the extra bonuses that came with that version, and included also is the original MSX games that are translated to English in there too. So you can play the original Metal Gear game, or in Metal Gear 2, Solid Snake, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think it's really neat because those games previously weren't released in North America, and I don't think translated either.
That's an amazing addition. Like, yeah, we got like the NES Ultra Games version of Metal Gear, but it was like not sanctioned by Kojima. They made a lot of unnecessary changes. They changed the final boss, and 2 just never came here. We got like Snake's Revenge, which was like this weird third-party thing, but yeah.
I think it's really cool for them to do such a thing like that too. And it's also, like I said, it's cleaned up. And from my understanding, they did a lot of so the original version kind of has that over the shoulder feel. I shouldn't say over the shoulder. I guess the top down view more of the
like
game.
an isometric style.
That the first 2 games have. And
top down.
According to Kojima, that was because he said, well, this game was always intended just to be a trilogy with Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, and 3. He never intended to do 4 and 5. So when developing this game, he only stuck to that. Well, this matches 1 and 2. Later, when releasing this game, they added the third-person camera, which is also in the HD remaster. But honestly, I can't say I've ever used it. I guess because I'm so adjacent to 2 in the first game, and I guess even Twin Snakes on the GameCube, that style that I never end up really ever using the third person camera to rotate the 3D camera to rotate the camera. So
yeah, it gives it a completely different feel. So this time I did switch. I usually end up switching back and forth, but this time I mostly stuck to the third person camera, and it feels really good. And then there's little things that I noticed that like maybe this like wasn't really made for the third person camera, you know what I mean? Like originally intended that way. Just small little gameplay things like not being able to see that well sometimes when you're in that camera mode. And like if you click back to the other one, you can see like, oh, okay, I can see around that corner a lot better now. You know what I mean? Because it kind of zooms the camera out. You can switch on the fly when you play as well. I played mostly in third person, and I had a good time with it. It feels almost a little more modern, I guess I should say, in the third person mode to me.
it seems like that was added because, like, I think that was one of the knocks against it, that people felt that more the 3D camera was more of a thing at the time, coming around at that time, and this game didn't have that. So it kind of felt like, I guess, to some maybe of the critics or people who played at the time, that maybe it was like a step back for all the advances this game's made. You still have something that's a little outdated, going through. That's why it was re-added when they re-released the game. But
well, I do remember the original game feeling more of a need to rely on like the motion detector and the sonar and like the microphone. I felt more of an urgency to switch between all of them in the first time around, and I guess I didn't really feel that need this time, which was nice. Just relying on first person mode a little bit more helped, but yeah. Which one did they have by default in that again for the HD?
The HD, I think it's like, I don't know if it starts off third person. Do you have to click into it?
I think you have to click into it by pressing the R3.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I never used that mode. I never switched in. I just kind of kept it the same. Yeah, I kind of kept the classic.
I will say probably I didn't switch it because I didn't know until after beating the game and then looking into it, like, how do you do this? Oh, okay. It's just something like I said, it's because I've maybe beaten this about 5 times now, or it becomes secondhand to me, like how this game works. I will admit it did take me, I don't want to say an hour, but it took me about 20, 30 minutes to get comfortable back, be like, oh yeah, this is how this game plays. It's slightly different. It is a little dated because it came out in 2004, but for control wise, but after you figure the game, it kind of becomes a breeze. It just takes about, I would say about 20 minutes to get used to how these controls really do work.
Yeah, it's like an adjustment curve because you have to, like, to use your gun in first person, you have to hit the shoulder button, then you have to pull the gun up with the square button, or the B button, like I was playing on Xbox, but I just say square. And then you have to hold the button and then let go to fire, just like very specific order of operations when you do different things in the game.
You can also click the left stick to raise and lower your gun. If you already have the gun out, you can do that. But if you don't, like, you have to like basically equip it with R. Then when you're first person mode, if you click left stick, you can, like, if you have like square, X or whatever console you're using, and you're holding that in. But this got me killed a few times actually. Would be holding it in and then being like, oh shit, I can't let go of this now. But I have the attack button held in, and I eventually let go of the shot. I alert the enemy, and I get shot for it.
Yeah.
But I found if you hit left stick, then you just lower the gun if you're doing that.
Oh, I
And
didn't
then
even know that.
Yeah, then you don't fire.
That's cool.
All the little subtle things they don't really tell you, but you just kind of figure out as you play the game.
Are you guys like me and you basically just use the trank gun the entire time
Yes.
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
suppressor? You just have to make sure that's the one thing if you I still don't even know basically if you can just drop your suppressor, throw it away, and put a new one on because there's always been like once or twice where just the suppressor breaks right at you're getting really near the end and all of a sudden bink, oh the dog, yeah I just alerted a dog or something like that because I'm actually making a real sound as opposed to just no one really hears you of your with the suppressor on. It's pretty quiet and if you hit them in the head with the suppressor, it's they go down immediately and go night night as opposed to like walking around for I don't know, 15 seconds before falling asleep. So,
Yeah. Yeah, so you
Even
get
that-
kind of good with like sniping with your little train gun, pretty much.
Yeah, because I mean, ultimately, anything like you also have the handgun that has a different suppressor, but it's like if you shoot the enemy once and you don't get a headshot, then they're gonna be like, "What? The enemy's here!" But if you hit somebody with a tranquilizer, they're like, "Huh? What was that?" And then
true.
you just have to wait them out. It's like if you don't want to get caught, it's the best way for sure. Because even if someone gets like tranked and knocked out, and another soldier finds them, they'll just be like, "Hey, what's wrong?" They'll kick them and wake them up. But if I find a body, then they're going on alert immediately, right? So yeah, no, absolutely, trank all the way.
I will say though too, upon this playthrough, and I don't know if I discovered this prior to that. If I ever set off an alarm, I found I can almost just run to the next area and be good, and maybe just hide in the bushes, and the alert will go away. But if you stay in that area, it's gonna stick around for a little while. Where the guys are keep patrolling that area. The only time I can ever recall is maybe that one time where you're trying to escape when you meet up with Eva for the first time. I think you rest and you wake up the next day, and Ocelot's crew shows up, and I think you have to kind of just sneak away. I tried sneaking away, but I can't because the fence is locked and everything. You're basically you're there to take out everybody there. So
I think it was like six soldiers, 6 or 8.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 8.
Yeah, they have a counter. You have to like take them all out before you can move ahead. That took me a few times to do.
And there's one on the roof. There's that one. I'm like, where is this guy? He keeps sending the alarm, and then eventually you find he's on the roof. So I'm gonna take him out first.
Yeah, and then if somebody sees you on the roof, they start throwing grenades up there. So you'll be like, oh crap, roll away from this grenade. Kojima's known for his cutscenes. He's known for his story. We've been talking about that. How do you guys feel about the cutscene length? Like, do you like that exposition where Volgin? Okay, good example. Volgin will basically, before you fight him, he's like, you know what? I guess I'll explain everything to you. And then you sit down and you watch a 20-minute cutscene. Do you guys like that style, or what's your general feeling on the cutscenes in this game?
Yeah, well, I mean, the cutscenes were one thing I really noticed. This game had a much more condensed story overall. Like the political end of it was there, right? Like, but you got most of that in the briefing. And then when you got to the actual grounds, when you actually got on the ground, it was mostly all business. And that was something I kind of noticed. Like, the cutscenes were all kind of like, you know how this game kind of has a James Bondish feel to it, and not just like the Snake Eater theme, but like just the lone agent. I mean, you could argue by that comparison, Eva's like the stand-in for a Bond woman. Like, it's got that kind of dynamic to it, right?
Yeah.
Volgin's your big impossible, Russian baddie. It kind of sticks to that, and I really appreciate that. So like when a cutscene happens, it's because something important happens. And that also kind of brings me to my point of isn't that much codec dialogue either.
That's true.
On your transceiver, that is so trimmed down from like the previous games that you almost kind of forget that your support characters are there for chunks of the game. Like for a lot of the fights, I forgot to call like Zero or Paramedic or Sigurd. And then we get to later in the game, I'm like, oh, right, they're there. They're part of my crew. They're never mandatory calling me into like a 20-minute call scene. So I forget that they're there. Yeah.
I guess it's the more straightforward of the series than in that aspect, huh? Because some of them are like, you'd be sitting there for a while listening to whatever codec conversation. So, yeah.
Yeah. But it rewards you if you actually sit there and listen to it, though, which I appreciate. Just being able to like getting to know some of these characters, especially without going too heavy in the spoiler territory, learning who some of these characters go on to be, like what you learn about them later on conflicts so much with what you know about them, like as people, as you play that game. Paramedic especially.
She tells you about all her favorite movies too.
yeah, then then when you look back on Metal Gear Solid 1, you kind of see how all those movies had an effect on her psyche, and yeah,
Yep.
Paramedic becomes soulless, man. It's insane. Just not in this not in this game, but in the Metal Gear story, Paramedic becomes like a pretty heartless scientist at some point.
Yeah.
Without giving away too much.
I agree with you. I also feel this one's a little bit more straightforward than 2. 2 is one of those Metal Gear Solid 2s where like I have to go into like deep like research for it because I'm always like, well, there's a lot that just goes way over my head in Metal Gear Solid 2. And it's fascinating because a lot of it kind of Metal Gear Solid 2, I shouldn't say a lot, but some of it kind of ties into like with today's like discussion with what's going on. I don't want to say in America, but like in the world maybe. And it's neat for that aspect. But 3 is much, I want to say, an easier story to follow as opposed to 2. 2 is very convoluted, and I guess I like listening into the theories or the deeper explanations behind everything with 2. But like 2 is the hardest one for me to follow out of every game in the Metal Gear Solid series. Well, this one might be the easiest. Maybe the first one might be even easier, but I guess I really just I like the long cutscenes, like in the way you said Vulcan goes in the deep explanation. I appreciate that. Why something like that's going to happen. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's kind of consequence of the time and the technology too, right? Like you notice how 1 and especially 2, because of them being in the digital age, how complex and at times convoluted of a story that gets. When you take the story back to something like the 1960s, when technology is simpler and even in movies, narratives are simpler.
True.
Kojima being a big fan of movies, and I found this, and all those things got tied into this being like a much simpler narrative. Obviously significant when you look at the overall Metal Gear history, like how these characters and this event ties in. But the actual storytelling itself, is way more straightforward, with probably one of the best endings of the entire series.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. I like the voice acting. I mean, some of it's very hammy, but it kind of that's the tone of the, like Solid Snake or Naked Snake in this one, I guess. Literally, anytime somebody says something to him, it feels like he just echoes it back to him as a question. He'd be like, "The Shagohod," and he'd be like, "The Shagohod." That's just how he talks. He doesn't really...
vision.
Yeah, basically. I just has its own like charm to it, I think.
Oh no, absolutely. Because the funny thing is, I remember when that first came out, like because you do get that really long, drawn out sequence at the beginning with the boss where they're talking and there's like this big melodrama. It's like, why did you go? There's so much more I need you to teach me. It's just like this big thing, and I'm like, oh man, is this gonna be what the game is? But no, like absolutely, the melodrama stays there. The people who play the Cobra unit were great. You can tell they were having fun with it.
I am the fear, shit like that.
I just see the voice actor being like, wait, so you're telling me that I get to play a character who's covered in bees, who shoots bees at people and gets to scream a lot.
Yeah.
And you're paying me to do this.
I also I love all the boss fights. And then Ocelot's boss fight, him just saying all his dumb quips and stuff to you, and yeah, it's good times.
Oh, that hand gesture, man. Like you can't see it. Nobody who's listening is ever going to see it, but if you play the game, you know what I'm talking about. Ocelot's signature hand gesture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Although it becomes signature in that game because I don't think you ever see him use it before then, which was funny to me because it became like this thing. And they even wrap it around in other games where he does it, and I'm like, huh, that's such a weird signature to kind of leave out of the rest.
And this is my favorite version of him, I guess, out of all the series too. Young Ocelot. They
so
say
cocky.
What do they call him? They call him Ocelot, right? Or does boss call him Ocelot or something like that?
Shelashashka?
Yeah.
Adamovich. Oh, what was his last name? It was Adamovich something. I forget his last name.
No, Snake. Sorry, there's a conversation where doesn't Snake say like he's like you're not an Ocelot or something like that. Or I can't remember their check. Like I don't know if they're just find his name, but he's the reason why Snake only has one, or Big Boss has one eye, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's true.
And also I think the when you first see him and he meows like roars like a cat, that's kind of setting the tone for his setting the tone for his character a little bit.
He's just so it's just funny because he's kind of like this older, shrewd, like the clear villain behind the scenes role for like the first two games, and then he is like you get the three, and he is just this young, cocky, brash, arrogant shit who is clearly talented as hell, right? But like all the scenes of Snake with Ocelot when he's like just like Snake. The thing is, in that game, Snake could have killed Ocelot probably 6 times over.
Yep.
Easy. Because every time Ocelot shows off and fucks up, every time he lets his gun jam,
he stops Eva from killing him too. Remember? She's like, why'd you let him go? He's gonna report. And he's like, he's too young or something like that. He's like,
yeah, it's like he's still young.
He's just a kid or something like that.
Yeah, I love how he just breaks down every time he messes up. He's like, that's the wrong gun. You know, and then he goes super in depth about all the little piston firings in a gun to explain why he messed up and stuff like that. Kind of like giving him a little training almost.
Mm-hmm.
He does that to Ocelot.
There's too much kickback on that gun, you know, and you're holding it wrong, you know.
Yeah, he trains Ocelot indirectly so much in that game, even as an experiment for torture, just so he get his whole torture thing that he carries on for the rest of the games.
Well, the mega twist at the end with him is that he actually was Adam, so Snake is supposed to be when he, after healing up after taking a whooping from the boss, and she breaks him down, essentially saving his life because they were going to kill him, but she essentially, you know, purposely hurts him badly, but she knows he'll survive because she's taught him how to survive. He's sent back in a mission, and his mission is to take out the boss. He's supposed to meet with 2 spies, right? He's supposed to meet with Adam and Eve, and he meets up with Eva, and she portrays herself to be, you know, she says, because he's supposed to meet up with Adam, and she says, well, Adam's not going to be able to make it here, so I came in his place. Ocelot turns out to be, at the end, he turns out to be the Adam who was supposed to meet up. He was the spy he was supposed to meet up with, and Eva was not Eve. And that, I think they said Eve died. I think probably, right?
Yeah.
But she was portraying herself to be Eve because she essentially is working for the Chinese government, right? Trying to get the what's the plan called?
Philosopher's Legacy.
Yeah.
So and you eventually find that out because he is there in the final room with Nixon at the end of the credits, where he's in the room, and there's actually an achievement if you actually see him, if you can point the camera on him, where there's an achievement in the game. I tried. I couldn't find it. But I was trying to get as many the achievements as possible on this playthrough. I missed. So, but yeah, that's one of the twists, that he's actually there working for the U.S. government as well with Snake, but he doesn't know it. So,
yeah, that's like the post-credit scene basically. Mm-hmm. Like it's just of audio recording him revealing that piece of information at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's a double agent.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Eve this entire time is portraying herself to be, you know, working with you, and what's called, and essentially that's the other way. You're supposed to be working with Ocelot and not her, but she fell for him, right? But she was I think she most likely was because she was enamored with the boss as well. Where I know, I'm trying to process this all because there's a little twist here and there where she was supposed to kill Snake and take basically everything for it, but she couldn't. So
yeah, she took the legacy, but she didn't take. No, she took the legacy. She didn't kill Snake, but then you find out she got double crossed, and it wasn't the actual legacy. Ocelot switched it out.
Mm-hmm.
And got that money for the U.S. Because the whole idea was like, I guess we haven't really talked about it, but like the idea of like who the philosophers were, which were like a group of like, you know how people talk about like the Illuminati, like the most rich and powerful who clearly like run the world. Well, that's basically what the philosophers were back in like the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Late 1800s, like, you know, the real people, and it was a select group of people from the United States, China, and Europe. No, United States, China, and Russia.
Sounds right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and then there was like this big fight over the legacy because it was like 100 billion or something like that, which back then would have been, you know,
a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot now, but you know, for a war, yeah, back then it was a lot more.
And they would probably change the tide of like put the war in some specific person's favor if they had it right, basically.
Oh yeah, and the
Yeah.
R&D that they were clearly able to do because of it, right? Like they managed to make the Shago Hod with some of that.
We haven't even
Yeah.
talked about the Shagahod at all. That's like one of the major plot points in the story. Like, but there's so much to this game. Like, you know,
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, the Shackle Hod is basically just what they tried before Metal Gear. I mean, it was like the weird.
The first Metal Gear, right?
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Oh, it was like a tank that just had like these little like almost lobsterish like front claws in terms of like function for moving it around and well, not
Yeah.
claws, but it had the describing the design of that thing is so fucking strange. God damn it, Kojima.
Essentially, it's designed though, right, to be able to, at this point in time, Russia's not able to, I guess, get a nuclear bomb in the U.S. region, basically. But with this creation, it's able to because it's designed. It's kind of like a launching catapult, basically, where it would, it gets a running start and can eventually deploy a nuclear bomb, and eventually it has the ability to reach almost anywhere in the world. So I guess that's one of the main points of having it destroyed, right? Is that it's the ability where it can, because there's multiple nukes also
Yeah.
deployed in this game too, right?
Oh, I was gonna say like the real danger apparently was the fact that Volgan was the one with the technology because it's kind of established that there are certain political powers that if they had one, they would use that as a small deterrent. But Volgan wanted to like get one in every major section of Russia. He wanted to mass produce, and then he wanted to sell it on the world market, so everybody would have a fucking Shagohod. Clearly, Volgan's like one of the biggest villains Metal Gear basically has, like one of the biggest objective villains, and it was just
Yeah.
like that was basically the plan. He was going to put Shagohods everywhere.
Yeah. Like
Before Stake stops him.
yeah, he's even such a big villain that in this game he's the one who launches one of the nukes.
Oh man, that is insane. Yeah, where he just fires a nuke at a research facility because it's like, yeah, well, might as well cover our tracks.
Yeah.
Time to bomb my countrymen.
Yeah, and I think the cool thing with the Shagohod is the set piece moment at the end where you're on the motorcycle with Eva, and the Shagohod's chasing you, and then you have to like blow out this bridge, and of course that's not good enough, so it climbs back up, and then you have to fight it on like this launch area and like destroy Volgan, like controlling the Shagohod with like his electric powers. It's crazy. I love it. You feel like a badass. I feel like a badass when I play that part of the game, for sure.
Yeah, that was probably one area where I think the RPG did work. I was saying earlier, like the RPG did have a lot of use. During that chase sequence where you have not just a Shagohod, but like all those like bikes full of troops coming at you.
Definitely.
It was just like rocket launcher. If you place it right, you can take out like 2 bikes in one shot.
Mm-hmm.
A cool little trick with that too, I realized, is it takes a second to reload the RPG. If you unequip and re-equip, it's automatically loaded, so you can just be like, boom,
Yes.
and then do that, and then do it again and do it again. So yeah, it was very effective when he did that.
Apparently that's every weapon too. I was doing it with all the machine guns, and it was just like, oh, because the M63 is like takes so long to reload. It feels like forever. But yeah, if you do that trick you said, we just like click, right trigger or right button, then do it again, then yeah, easy reload.
I didn't know it worked on every weapon. I was just kind of like playing that section, and then I was like, man, this is taking a while, and then I did it by accident. I was like, oh, okay, this works. I'm just thinking, like, if we miss anything, like anything y'all want to talk about.
I mean, there's more. There's always more to talk about, but you can always just play. Tell people to play it themselves. That's the thing. Is there's the whole
Play it your own damn self.
Well, I'm saying we've talked pretty much everything. Inside we already kind of covered the whole why Boss did it, right? Where she did it, to help with with America. She never turned her back, even though she was portrayed. She knew what she was doing. She was portrayed. That was kind of the giant twist. And essentially, at the end, right, Big Boss. He gets the title of Big Boss at the very end because there can only be one boss, and essentially he became the next boss. Essentially getting the name Big Boss, but he ultimately was kind of like disgusted by the end of it, leaving I don't want to say America to form his own group, which then goes on the next part of the story, right?
Yeah.
Which at the time led into the original Metal Gear games, 1 and 2, which then leads into Metal Gear Solid. But I don't know, there's more to it, but I would say just play for yourself, and then the
You
series is
spoiled
great.
everything now, but
Like the entire continuity of Metal Gear Solid is so long and drawn out and convoluted. We couldn't possibly cover the whole thing in like an hour and a half ish podcast, right? Like I don't think we could.
no.
But at the same time, Metal Gear Solid 3 is like the starting point. If you play it, like this is kind of where everything starts, and everything else just kind of comes as a consequence of the game, a consequence of the actions of this game.
Would you guys say? I've always been for saying that if you're gonna play a Metal Gear Solid game, you can start. I always say you can start with 3. Do you have a preference for playing the Metal Gear series? Would you still say go 1, 2, then 3, or would you rather, or would you be fine with saying you can start with 3, then go to 1 or something?
It kind of depends on what you're going for. Like, okay, if I was gonna say this to somebody, I would frame it like this: like, if you want to see like how the gameplay mechanics progress through time, then play it in release order, like 1, 2, etc. But if you care more about seeing the story from the beginning, then play it like 3, Peace Walker, all those in that order. You could start on 3, in my opinion.
Don't start on 5 though, because I will say with 5 that I like 5, but the combat is so like it's so
Radically
polished.
different.
It's so polished and different that if you play that first and then play the other ones, it's gonna mess you up completely.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The very fact that 5 has a mechanic where if somebody sees you, you have like these like 5-ish seconds of slow motion time to react and shoot.
Mm-hmm.
None of the other games will ever give you that.
That's true.
Yeah.
The Fulton balloons, all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, maybe Peace Walker, but that's pretty much it.
Oh, that's true. I've never played Peace Walker actually. This actually, that's one of those I just never got to.
Yeah, they took that mechanic from Peace Walker.
Yeah.
Maybe Portable Ops, but I'm not sure because I never played Portable Ops.
All right, so
Yeah.
Ready to wrap up, put a bow on this, Josh?
Yeah, that sounds good. Where can we find you, Ryan, on the interwebs?
Well, thanks for having me, Josh. You can find me on Twitter at It's Rocket Sauce and Instagram with the same handle. Sometimes I'm the host of the Cartridge Club, but this time I really wanted to be the guest because this is one of my favorite games of all time. So thank you, Josh, for having me on the show.
No problem. And Tim, where can we find you on the good old interwebs?
Well, also thanks you for having me. This was a lot of fun. Really glad you guys came and invited me on for this. Well, my channel, I have a YouTube channel. It's called Are You Okay? HARUOKAY, that I run with my co-host Kevin McNeil. By the time this podcast comes out, we should have a new video. Our first one in probably like 8 to 9 months. It's going to be all about fighting games, specifically Street Fighter Alpha 2. So we're really excited for that. But outside of that, you can find me on probably Twitter's like the most active thing. And that's at Are You Okay? HARU0KAY.
Cool. Thank you.
Somebody else took the one with the O, but I've rented on that before. I'll find them and kill them in their sleep.
It happens, man. Thanks for
I want that Twitter
everybody.
handle.
Well, we should probably contact that guy and get it for you then.
Oh, he only has one follower.
Oh, that's the worst right there.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Just the avatar of a squirrel.
awesome.
Squirrel.
Are you the follower?
No, but I'm gonna hunt down that fucking squirrel. He'll give me the answers I need.
But yeah, it's an honor to get asked to do this, to host the show, even though I kind of feel like I felt like I hosted it, I guess. I felt like I was just chilling with you guys, honestly, talking. But
It's my favorite kind of talk.
Yeah, and I appreciate the Cartridge Club letting me be on here and do this because it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like an honor, it feels like, to be here doing this. So awesome. And you can find me personally at Frantic Society on Twitter, and I sometimes do a podcast called Frantic Thoughts, which has been spotty this year, but I will be getting back to that. And it's basically just me chilling, talking to myself It's a one-man show. So yeah.
Also, I am a part of a Game of the Month podcast similar to the Cartridge Club. It is a PC-focused show called the Quick Save Club, and this month we're going to be playing simulation games over there. So if you guys want to hang out this December, it's bad. It's a bad pun, but I didn't come up with it, so you can't blame me for that. But if you want to go over there and play some simulation games with us, that's what we'll be doing this December. But over in the Cartridge Club community on the Cartridge Club Main 2 podcast, we are having a Star Wars month of epicness. So over on the main Cartridge Club Prime podcast, we're going to be playing the Knights of the Old Republic for the original Xbox. And on our sister podcast, the Cartridge Club Portable podcast, we're going to be playing Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith. So if you're playing along with it and you want to talk about it, be sure to use the hashtag PlayAlongWithPrime on whatever social media platform you frequent regularly. Also, if you want to get a head start for the January's Game of the Month, we'll be playing Mickey Mouse in the Castle Evolution on the Sega Genesis. Also, if you're ever interested in being a guest on the show, please reach out to us. We're always looking forward to having new community members on to talk about all the games that they love. To those of you interested in supporting the club beyond a review on the podcast app of your choice, I'd like to again mention that the club is entirely funded by pledges made from members of our community. We are extremely grateful to those supporters, and if you're interested in becoming one of them, please look into how you can do that at patreon.com/cartridgeclub. And for me, Ryan, and Tin, thank you for listening to the show, and we look forward to hearing from you next month. CC Unite.
What a thrill, with darkness and silence through the night. What a thrill, I'm searching and I'll melt into you. What a fear in my heart, but you're so supreme. I give my life, not for honor, but for you. In my time, there'll be no one else. Crime, it's the way I fly to you. I'm still in a dream, snake eater. Someday you go through the rain, and someday you'll feed on a tree frog. It's ordeal, the trial to survive for the day we see new light. I give my life, not for honor, but for you. In my time, there'll be no one else. Cry
Snake. Snake. Snake!
Oh, it's beautiful.